Oh, well, welcome to you guys to Connection and Conversation tonight, where we are going to talk about homeschooling, some do's and some don'ts. And I got some amazing people joining me today, and I hope some more people join. Feel free to jump on. If you're watching this live right now, you can go to theimpactfulparent.com/talk with me, join the Zoom room, and ask your own questions if you like. And so I want to go ahead and get started. And one of the things that I'm going to start with homeschooling is that one of the more important things that parents sometimes neglect to do is create a really good space for your children to do their work. And so I'm going to start with that. Like, creating a space is super important. And what does that space need to look like? Well, it's going to look different for each kid. And I'll tell you right now, I have to spread out my kids in the house so that they have their own space. And they're not arguing about whose space is where and who is where. So I have like one that's over here behind this fireplace. They're in the office. I got one that's over here in the kitchen. I got one that wants to sit really like right with me as I sit down and probably needs the most attention with me throughout the day as I continue to work. But things that you want to look for as you create the space to make your kids successful is, you want them to have a quiet space, and they're probably going to be doing some things online. So if you need to get headphones for them so that they're not disturbing the kid that's going to sit right next to them, or if they need to be in the next room, those are things that you want to think about tonight before tomorrow, because otherwise you're just going to end up hitting into arguments tomorrow, and I can't hear my teacher and things like that. So this is why we're talking about it Sunday night, so we can make our kids successful tomorrow. So quiet, let them have their own space. Think about lighting. Is it going to be a good place for them to have lighting? And some kids are super sensitive to different kinds of light, and you may not realize it, but you might realize it now that you're homeschooling them. So even the kind of light bulbs that you have might affect their learning. You're going to want to eliminate distractions around them. So especially for kids that do get distracted super easy, this is going to be really important. Some kids can be in the kitchen and snack while they work, and that actually helps them to be oral and work, and it helps their brain to do connections. And some kids, that's just a distraction. So you got to know your child and figure out how to eliminate those distractions. And the last thing before I let these other amazing people chime in too is make sure that their space that you're creating for them is not a bed and not a couch. And that's going to be super important for creating just the ambiance of, hey, this is a learning environment and not a place to take a nap, not a place to relax. Like, nope, you're going to get up and we're taking school seriously at home. And it starts with setting up these expectations like tonight so that they're ready tomorrow. As you guys, because all of you who are here right now who are joining me have different ages of kids and have had different experience with homeschooling. So this is really exciting that you're all here tonight. Do you have anything to add to any of that? Like, just talking about the space itself, what needs to be a part of that space? Did I hit anything or did I miss anything?
I could share just one thing, is to be okay with letting each kid have whatever they need. Like, I have one kid who loves a fidget, but it drives me up the wall. But being open to allowing them whatever it is that they need to do what they have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I have two, and one has been doing homeschool all year, and the other one just started homeschool a couple of weeks ago. She is very good about using her desk and having everything organized. My son is a migrator. So, a lot of his stuff is reading and writing, and so he kind of migrates throughout the house. Sometimes he's downstairs in the front room that no one uses. Sometimes he's upstairs in the loft. Sometimes he's over in his bedroom, and he just kind of migrates throughout the house, and that seems to work for him. We do have 2 different tables set up for him that he very seldomly uses. But
but it's just what you're saying is that what works for him. And that's good that, you don't have to treat your kids the same, because they're not the same. They're different. So your expectation for your older child could be different than the expectation of letting your other one roam. That's great. I think that's awesome. And then another thing that you're going to want to set up for tomorrow is the precedent that they're going to get up. And there's going to be a particular time that you're going to start school every day. That means getting up and being ready for school. So that's going to look different in each house, but some people need to take a shower to get mentally ready to start a day. Some need to change clothes. The clothes is actually kind of a big deal. It mentally really puts people into a different mindset when you wear different things. And so that's why we have things like business attire and yoga pants. I mean, we don't wear our yoga pants to work. It's purposeful. It's because it actually creates a mindset. And then creating that mental seriousness that just is that this is school even though it's at home. So maybe sitting down tonight with your kids and saying, I don't know what things were like before, but moving forward, we need to take this seriously because we're going to be stuck at home doing school for the next few weeks and we can't be lax anymore. So like having those conversations with their kids. Anything else that you guys would add? Like, how do you get your kids ready for tomorrow? Anybody?
I know, like with Marisa's schooling, because Holy Family was totally new to this, and she had teachers that would post things late at night or early in the morning, and sometimes at 12 o'clock. And so it was kind of all over the place for the first couple of weeks. And then the school was like, no, everything needs to be posted between 9 and 12, and they do block days, and they only have 4 classes each day. So that was interesting because she's really good about just getting a project and completing it, but now having to make sure that she's up and ready at 9 o'clock, opposed to she was kind of sleeping in until, 10, and it really didn't make any difference to me as long as she was getting her work done. So they actually created more of a schedule to keep them on a normal school cycle.
That's interesting that the school did that. That's really great. Like their school actually shifted its mindset. That's awesome. That's good thinking for them. Anybody else? How are you getting your kids ready for tomorrow mentally?
I'll share because so I'm in Cali, guys, in California, and we didn't get anybody to help us before we got thrown into it. And Christina, I want to give you mass props because if someone would have set us down and just given us a basic idea like you are, it would have been so helpful. The one thing, if this will be new, I would say is talk about flexibility with the kids, because one of my kids, he's used to his structure, his routine, and having it switch up, especially with it all being new, was very, very challenging. So if I would have known ahead of time, I could have better prepared him. Mm-hmm. So flexibility, I think, is an important conversation.
And you said something that's really important, that kids really do need and like routine. Not all of them, but most of them do. And that's what school provides. So creating a routine for them and to be as visual with that routine as possible can really help a lot of kids. Again, I'm trying to get talking like in real big general forms, and most kids that will be useful for, not every single one, but make that visual, to actually have a piece of paper written out saying, okay, we're going to start school at 8:30. We're going to do, just English first, and then we'll do math, and then we're going to have a snack, and we'll have lunch around noon. And having them be able to look at it really helps. And that's what teachers do at school. We post our schedule on the board, and the kids know their schedule. So now that they don't have that, it is on our shoulders as parents to create it for them. In order to make that routine, and I like to say routine versus schedule because I just don't like the word schedule that much. In order to create that routine for them, you need to know the expectations of the school. So now, if you haven't yet, you got to talk to their teachers. You got to find out, are assignments due every single day, or are they due at the end of the week? Is the school about to give you a whole bunch of worksheets at the beginning of the week, or are they physically responsible to show up online the same way that we're doing right now, to talk to a teacher in a virtual classroom? And if you have high school students, it's a little bit more challenging because you got more teachers that you're going to have to talk to and deal with and know those expectations. But it's completely possible. It just takes a simple email. You can even copy and paste the same email to all those teachers. But it's really important to kind of set the precedent and know what you got to know what the kids are expected so that you can kind of just monitor, making sure that, and if they need any help, and then you already know the expectations. Because the last thing you want to do is go, well, I really don't know if that's due or not. I'm not too sure. And then you go and run and ask the teacher and find out it's late or something like that. So to be one step ahead of the game and talk to them now. If your school does not give you any structure at all, which I would hope that you're not in a school like that, but if they didn't, and you're creating your own structure with your kids, I'm going to suggest that you do 4 subjects. And the 4 subjects are math, they're reading, science, and if they're taking a second language, to continue to do a second language. Those are subjects in particular that you will lose skill level if you don't continuously practice all the time. And those are also, luckily, things that you can find apps for and programs online to help you to continue to make those routines for your kids. What does it look like in California? Are they having the kids show up at a particular time?
So now the first week was really chaotic. I don't even know if the teachers really knew. So everything you're saying is so spot on. And the other thing I would add to what you said, just because we went through it, by now I'm sure you've been told if you're going to use other apps. So like we have specific websites and apps that we're using for math and for different things, but check your login if you haven't done so, because if you wait till school starts, that sent my kids through the roof, both of them. Everyone was so frustrated because no one could get in. So the fact that you guys have a heads up, it's so cool. But each kid has a set agenda. They have their own clipboard. We have written up for each of them how we're working throughout the day so they know what's expected. They have Zoom meetings on certain days with certain teachers, and it's now laid out in a format. So
it's nice to see that Holy Family's doing that now too. So that's really, really good. How are you handling the homeschooling portion of that, Kat, with Lo? Is there any difference in his schedule now that he's got all these people around him?
It's funny. Most of the time, I don't know what my kids are doing most of the day. Like Lorenzo's kind of doing his thing. As I said, he kind of pops in, kind of that little bit of a social person. So he kind of pops around the house. He doesn't start doing homeschooling until he has breakfast. Marisa doesn't need breakfast before she starts to do her thing. So they're just so different, each kid.
I love that they're different and they're doing different things, and you can let them. It actually is a great segue to the next thing I wanted to add, is that parents, you got to stop, in my opinion, hovering over your child when they're trying to do school. So we send our kids off to school and you don't really know what they're doing at school, because you're just assuming that everything's great and they're being responsible and they're getting to class on time and they're doing their homework and they're doing what the teacher's asking them to do. For most of America, the teachers are still trying to communicate with your children, and they're still trying to meet with them online. And your kids are probably very well equipped to doing things online. So I think we kind of feel, since they're in our space and we're all together, that we have to hover over them as parents. And I'm going to say, don't do that, and actually take a step back. The more that you can let your child independently do their schoolwork and be responsible for showing up on time and getting to their classes on time, even if it's virtual, is so much more healthier for everybody, including you. You don't need to do that. You don't need to be a hover parent like that. It's okay to let them do their own thing. It shows that you trust them more than anything else. And you can give them rewards for when you see that they're doing really good, dedicated work. You're like, you know what, I just saw you working really hard today, and whatever they like to give them an extra 30 minutes on their electronic because they did so awesome. Like, that's okay. That's great. You could show them that you saw them working hard and acknowledge those efforts that they're making. And remember that you are actually, except for Kat down there with her one child, you're not really homeschooling. You are having school at home. Those are really big differences. Homeschooling, you're the teacher and you're really trying to hover and teach a child. Most of the curriculum that's going to be across America is going to be school at home, where the teacher is still trying to communicate with your child and teach them something, and you're really just a monitor and not doing anything. And the more that you do, the more your child will be lazy. And they won't do it because they know that you'll help them. So take that step back. I really, really urge you to kind of shift that mindset, and it's not easy. Anybody want to add anything to that, or are you experiencing that?
Well, Holy Family basically said that since this is going to be a new thing, that if they are missing any assignments, the parents will automatically get an email. So they don't want us to be hovering over them, but they want the kids to know, hey, look, we will be notifying because this is a different thing going on.
Yeah, that's good.
I was just going to add that too, because one of my boys thought he could slide out of the radar because I wouldn't know anything, not realizing that the communication between the teachers and the parent was so much stronger now because they are checking back in. Mm-hmm. So it's like you have to moderate, but you also have to pay attention.
So what happens then? I can hear somebody virtually asking me, who's watching this replay right now, what happens if my kid just refuses and he doesn't want to do the work? And what I would tell them would be that, you're going to do the same kind of consequences that if they weren't doing the work at school. It's the same thing. So if that means contacting the teacher and trying to brainstorm of solutions of how you're going to get your child to be more motivated, talking to a school counselor, or creating consequences, real talk to them, things like, when you do this, then this will happen. And those can go either direction, whether you're talking about a consequence or a reward. When you don't do this, then I am going to take away your electronic for whatever, a little bit more amount of time, or whatever that punishment or natural consequence might be. It's the same thing. You're still trying to motivate, just like they would at school, just like they would. Let's see here. One of the things that I do to help and aid with this whole schooling thing is I use an app called, I don't even know how to say it. It's Custodio, I think. It's Custodio. And what it is that's an app that shuts off my child's, all the electronics. I get to add electronic on for me certain times of the day. So I just go online and I say, okay, I don't want them to access any internet, or I could just say apps. You can pick and choose the things. I don't want them to access any social apps between this time and this particular time. And that's been really helpful for me because I don't have to say, put down the electronic, because it's just going to go off. It just goes off, and then they know. There's no argue about it. That's one of the little parenting hack that I do to kind of help monitor these time slots. So if I want the kids to do school between 9 and 10, but they can get them on, they can go back on and have a little electronic break for snack time, I can literally set that up in our routine for the day that they get to go back onto their electronic, and you kind of program it onto your computer and then you let it go. You let it ride, and you just does it on its own. It's really great. Any other parenting hacks that you guys might have?
I'll throw one. If you have Apple devices, you can do it straight from your Apple devices if you're under the family share plan. So even from my phone, I can control all the apps without paying for another service. I don't know if the app you said you have to pay for. But
Yeah.
Some of them you do. Yeah. So if you have Apple devices, you have a lot of control. If you don't know about it yet, you should look into it, the screen time and stuff. And it's free because you're all Apple devices. And the only other thing I was going to add is I have one child that is super, he's more on the aggressive side. So words like, instead of, we do use when and if and when and all that. But also the other thing that works good for us is if you choose not to do your work, then you're going to not get what you're looking to have, whatever our agreement is that they get after their work's complete. So basically it gives him the power to choose, and then he feels like he's in control, so to speak. And he does better with those words than the other words. So,
yeah. I'm going to add now that maybe you take those things that are really important parts of your family values and add that to the routine of whatever you're creating for your children for the week. So if your family value, one of your family values is exercise, make sure to put PE into your routine. If reading for 30 minutes is a family value, throw that into the routine. It doesn't even just have to be a school routine. It can also be a full day routine. So kind of broaden your perspective on, it could be lots of different things. And if you don't know other things that maybe you want to put into your routine, I've got some ideas for you. And here's where the Cassie, Roxanne, Kat, Oz, when he's back, tell me, I would love to get more input on you, is start doing some life skill curriculum. This is super awesome and important, and now is the best time to treat and teach these life skill curriculums. Every single day you can take 1 hour and make it as part of your routine as a life skill curriculum. And what are the things you're going to teach? You can teach them how to cook simple things, macaroni and cheese, spaghetti, just like different kinds of sandwiches. You're going to teach them how to do their laundry. You're going to teach them how to do money management. And when I say that, I mean, like, most kids have no idea what a checkbook is. They don't know how to balance it. They don't know how to use a credit card actually properly. They just know they know what a credit card is, but they don't know how to use it, or how it, like, the whole concept behind credit. You can teach them about rent versus mortgages. You can teach them how to create a budget, especially if you have a high schooler who's getting ready for college. They need to know how much is groceries going to cost for them. How much do their food cost? You can go on to Safeway.com, or that Safeway is a local grocery store, but you can go to kingsupers.com and start looking at, make a cart of things that they want to buy and create a pretend budget off of the cart that they want to have. You can teach them how to change a tire. You can teach your child how to tie a tie or sew on a button. You'd be surprised how many people do not know how to sew on a button, especially your children. Or a really important one right now is how to take medication. And I mean just like a common cold. They have a common cold, and what do? As parents, you go and you give them their meds. But they don't know how to take a NyQuil bottle and read it. In fact, they don't even know, if you have a college student, a lot of them are going to call you back and say, Mom, I'm sick. What do I buy? So this is the time to show them, like, this is the bottle. This is what you're going to find. NyQuil's for the nighttime, days for the day, or whatever other cold medicine you might use. This is how you read the instructions of how much you're going to take. These are things that our kids take for granted because we do it for them right now. And yet they need to learn how to do them. So these are all these, like, life skill curriculum that I'm talking about. Do you guys have any other life skills you want to throw out there and teach your kids?
Foot massage.
Yes.
That's awesome. I love everything that you said. We do a lot of that throughout our whole day. The other thing I would add that I've seen, which I think we're on the same page, is the emotional life skills. Mm-hmm. So I have boys, they're 8 and 11, the two home. My 19-year-old's not in the house with us right now. And we talk about perspective. We talk about tone of voice. We talk about agreements and listening to each other. So literally, in building a fort, building a mission, they escalate, and also parents standing back and allowing them to, because you're there to moderate. But it's cool because they get pissed. And then I'll be like, well, have you listened to what he's saying? Oh, that's right. What are you saying again? And seeking to understand. So it's like this beautiful opportunity to incorporate those skills as well.
You can ask your kids, ask them the question, how often should you wash your sheets?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta have to teach them things like that. They don't really know. Or even along the same lines, if you were going to clean this counter, what product would you buy? These are things that your college student has to know before they leave you. So
Yeah, or let the boys clean their own toilet so they can see. Yeah.
Absolutely. One other thing, let's see. I want to talk a little bit about what happens if you have a defiant child who's just going to be really angry right now. And this is going to be very common. We're all really frustrated and being cooped up, and we're all getting kind of claustrophobic here in our homes. And the irritability of our kids is rising probably day by day. So one thing that I'm going to give you as a tip, if you have a defiant child who just doesn't want to do their work, it doesn't want to listen to you right now, one thing that doesn't work is that you getting louder, you getting bigger, you puffing up your chest more to be heard. That's probably going to not work the most. So instead, you're going to want to do the opposite of that. And you're going to want to stay calm. If you have a child who's screaming at you, it's more effective not to scream back, but instead to take a deep breath and calmly go, lower your voice and look them in the eye. But you set the precedent of how the conversation is going, the tone of that conversation. So again, getting louder and having a loud crying and screaming match is not necessarily going to get your kids to listen to you, but to do the opposite, you got to practice it. It's going to be really difficult for those of you who are really used to actually having those screaming matches, but staying calm could really make them take a step back and actually listen. Tell them that you want to hear their concerns and their opinions, and ask what is really bothering them. Because a lot of times the defiant child is not necessarily mad about what you're asking them to do. They're mad at their life at the moment. So again, it's very, very difficult, but I'm going to suggest that you take that step back and figure out what's really the problem, the underlying problem. And once you start to do that, you're going to want to empathize. Most of us do not actually empathize correctly. We do what's called empathy busters instead. But when you empathize, you're not just going to reiterate what they said, which is also a very good skill, so they can hear, you can restate what they said, and they can see that you heard them, but you're also going to say statements that say things like, I get it. I would probably feel the same way if I were in your shoes, kind of statements. And then you understand that they're just frustrated in this quarantine, just like we are. It's so hard. And if any of you have any other suggestions for how to deal with a defiant child, I'd love to hear it. There's no right or wrong answer to any of this, because every person and every kid is different. So what works for every kid is going to be different. And one thing, I'm going to put Oz on the spot because I can't remember if we were recording yet, but one of my favorite things to do with a defiant child is to speak to their love language. And Oz was talking about how he spoke to one of his children's love language in order to connect with him. And if you don't know your child's love language, I highly, highly suggest that this is a great opportunity to read that book. It's one of the more important things to do as a parent is to know how to speak to your child's love. And Oz, you want to actually, I'm gonna let you chime in on that.
Chime in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm a big advocate of emotional intelligence, right? Like that's one of the things that seems to be lacking heavily in most education is connecting with the heart and connecting with the emotions. And, it was sort of a personal journey myself, being married to an emotionally unavailable woman and then seeing the effect on my kids started to sort of reveal to me like how I was also emotionally unavailable. And nobody gives you that manual on parenting, like step one, lots of attention and nurturing. And how do you do that as a dad? How do I nurture my kids when I have some ideas around that's the woman's role or that's the mom's role to nurture? But I read recently somewhere that like in certain cultures like Samoan, the men are as nurturing, if not more nurturing than the women. And they do that through attention and affection. And I think those are the two key words for me. Finding out, the 5 love languages for kids was life-changing for me. I mean, I think I have 7 stubborn children. I'm just kidding. I have probably 2 that are really, really stubborn. My daughter actually created a situation that had me investigated by CPS for 6 months. Yeah, I love Catalina, your laugh right there. It's like, yeah, new marriage and being investigated by CPS. Oh,
We've had the same thing before at our house.
Have you?
It was like people take things out of context, and then the next thing you know, they're knocking on your door like, hey, what's this? You're what?
We've been there too.
Have you? Oh my God, I'm not alone.
Don't.
Yay.
No, you're not alone.
Oh, I just was like, oh my God, like I'm gonna be finally found out as a fraud, as a dad who's like I love my kids and I try to connect with them, but far from perfect. And my daughter she was from the time she could basically speak English, she just lied about everything. She lived in a fantasy world, and I couldn't figure it out. Couldn't figure out why she was constantly making things up. And so about 6 months into my second marriage, I feel like every time I talk about it, like my third marriage, by the time my 5th marriage, I'm going to be like, I'm just kidding. But it sounds funny when I hear myself say that out loud. It's like I never imagined I would be divorced twice. That means I have high special needs when it comes to relationships. Special needs, me. But the thing is going through that and then realizing like kids just want to be connected with and want to be heard. How much is solved by just letting them hear? And one of the best things, and I still do this with my kids, as they get older, they're a little bit more resistant to it. But this works really well when they're struggling or when they're quiet. And I actually learned this from a marriage counselor. And he would start out the counseling session. He did 2 things that were amazing. And I've done this with the kids. You can use a hula hoop. You can put a hula hoop on the ground. And when there's conflict, you only get to step into the hula hoop and say what you're going to do differently. You don't get to say conditioned based upon what the other person does, then I'll do it. No. Here's what I'm committed to doing. Here's what I will continue to do. So whether that's being honest or whatever it is, if there's a conflict, you say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to take care of my stuff myself. Here's what I'm willing to do. Here's the change I'm willing to make. And so it was a great little tool. It was like some of the counseling sessions, we'd just sit there in silence because it was like there's a hoop on the ground and you have to step into it and go, here's what I'm willing to do. And it was like, yeah, I'm not willing to do shit. Is she willing to do something? Then maybe I'll be willing to. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. What are you willing to do? So the 3 things that the counselor did that I've done with my kids is you ask them, you can adapt this to make it fit and flow with your relationship with your kids, but you would just do a check-in, and the counselor would lead out, and he would say, okay, I just want to check in with you. I want to check in with your heart. So he would lead out. His name was Max, and he would talk about what he was happy about, what he was sad about, what he was angry about. And he would just check in. And so every counseling session started out with Max going, I'm really happy. And he would list the things that were going on that week, that day, to say that he was really happy about. He really felt a lot of enjoyment. Then he would list the things he was sad about, the things that he was angry about. And one time when I went in for a counseling session, his daughter was going into surgery, and I don't know why he kept his appointment, but he like opened up with me that he wanted to be at the hospital, but he was there with me instead. And that he was feeling a lot of anger around that. And he just started crying. He just started opening up and really opening his heart. And I think the thing is, it's like anything with kids, right? The challenge is to model it for them, not just to ask them and expect them to open, but to open and then invite them to open too. And so the more honest I've gotten with my kids, like I've been through 2 divorces, so there's no hiding anything anymore from my kids. They've seen it all, right? And it's just like opening up and going, this is what I'm really happy about. This is what I'm feeling some sadness or some anger about. And by just opening up, the kids open up, and it just relieves. It's like pulling the pressure valves and letting them release some of their frustration and letting them be really honest without. And I think the thing that I learned was, as well as when they used to open up and then I would lecture them, guide them based upon the things they shared, and that would cause them to close back down. So when I just listen and go, what do you think about that? And really just be inquisitive, because they're so smart. Kids are so smart at solving their own problems when they realize it's their problem. And I think the thing is trusting them to find the way, and to just ask them questions without lecturing. And once I stopped lecturing and trying to close it with some sort of guidance to make myself feel better, that I told them what to do, just let them be in their emotion, and just let them be seen and heard. And that was such a healing thing. So it seems like with my kids, they're able to connect with their feelings. And that's been through 2 divorces. My 4 kids and the 3 stepkids have now been through 2 divorces, because she was married before too. So obviously she had 3 kids. So if that's not, but going through those kinds of things is very difficult on a kid, because the routine and the family life and everything gets broken up. But the one positive thing that's come out of it is their ability to feel their feelings and to communicate their feelings. And I feel like that is going to be a huge asset for them in life, to be able to communicate what they're really feeling and to connect with their heart, instead of being told constantly to not feel that. I mean, how many times as a kid were you told, don't look at me like that, don't show me those feelings, don't talk back to me, don't do that, shut those feelings off, shut your face off, I don't want to see that, I don't want to see your disappointment in me. Like my 17-year-old son told me I'm not his hero. And I was like, pull the knife out. Like, how badly does a dad want to be his son's hero in life, right? And he's like, you're not my hero. And I'm like, okay. You get to pick your heroes. You get to pick your teachers in life, ultimately. And I honor that. Like, who are your heroes? And tell me why. Like, why are these guys your heroes? Rather than what I wanted to ask him was, why am I not your hero? What have I done wrong?
I think that
all I've done is love you.
Oz's like that bottom line of the sentiment that's coming off is, if you have a defiant child, you really want to take the opportunity right now that we are in quarantine and that we are all together with your family, to have these tough conversations, which actually just by coincidence, Cassie and I just did a video which I'm releasing. Actually, if you're actually part of our blog, you got it this morning, and it's on YouTube right now live. But I'll be actually broadcasting it here on the Impactful Parent on Wednesday. That talks a lot about that you need to empathize, you need to really listen, and you need to speak to their love language. And if you're do all these things and really authentically listen without, and it's hard to listen when you're the bad guy and you can't get defensive. But if you do that, it really can open up doors to bringing down guards and creating those amazing bonding moments. I want to talk about one more thing as we talk about homeschooling and that it's going to be really important for you as the parent coming into this coming week, that you set boundaries for yourself also in part of the routine of the whole homeschooling thing. And what I mean by that is that if you are constantly available for your kids to say, Mom, I need help with this. Dad, I need help with this. Can you look at that? You are not going to get any work done. And most of us are still working parents trying to work from home. So my suggestion for you with that is you're going to have to create office hours within your routine that I mentioned earlier. And just like you're getting them ready for college, this is a life skill you're teaching your children, that you are not at their beck and call, but you are available to them. And that everybody has to have these certain priorities, that this is mom or dad's time to work, and they can ask you during, any questions they want, but it's during your office hours. So to have maybe that one from 1 to 2 o'clock, hey, do you guys have any particular questions that you need to ask me, and then I'll be able to ask them. And what can they do instead if you're too busy and they have a question and they're super, super frustrated? Don't forget, brainstorm with them those kind of things tonight before tomorrow. So you're setting these expectations up now. Don't tell them tomorrow, oh, by the way, this is not my office hours. No, you're going to talk about it tonight. Say, tomorrow I'll help you between 1 and 2 if you have any questions. If you have to have something answered and I can't attend to you because it's not 1 or 2 o'clock, between 1 and 2 o'clock, let's talk about what can you do instead. Can you Google it? Can you Google the answer? We know they know how to do Google. Everybody knows how to Google. My kids knew how to Google from the time they were 6. Can they ask a friend in their class? Can they call them? I love the idea of getting grandparents involved, asking a grandparent or a cousin, an aunt, somebody like that. Hey, do you mind if my kids call you and you can Zoom them the same way we're Zooming here right now? And they can always ask their teacher. Make sure your children know how to get a hold of their teacher when they have questions. Because you do need to set those boundaries for yourself. It's going to be super important so that you can be productive and you don't lose your own mind. So I think it's really, really, really important. And I also, before we run out of time here, want to talk quickly about the idea of possibly taking this opportunity that you have your kids at home to start, especially if you have a high schooler, to do some other things that would be really beneficial to them. We talked about life skill class, but if you have a high schooler, you could be doing some ACT or SAT prep. You could be doing college applications. You could be looking at colleges online at different things. You could be looking at summer programs and things that they can be doing this summer, and have your kids take the lead on, hey, I want you to pick 3 activities or 3 camps you want to go to this summer, and let your kids do that kind of work for you. So now you don't have to do it. Let them take the lead on what they want to do. They can do online browsing for colleges. You can have them read 30 minutes a day. More importantly, you can read with them as part of your routine for 30 minutes a day. A family book where you read out loud. That's actually a really powerful bonding moment for families, and a lot of families don't do it anymore, is read together, where a parent or a child is reading out loud and everybody just sits and listens. Teachers do it on the daily, and we don't do it as parents. I'm not too sure why. I need to get back into it. These are things that I need to take my own advice on that one. I used to do that a lot. I haven't done it, and I got to start. So you could have a video game hour where you play together. If your kids are really into video games, that's okay. You know, if you still want to do some family time, play with them. Moms, I know dads are so much more eager to play video games with their kids, but moms, you got to jump in there too. Jump in there. Do something that that you're not used to. You pull yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. I'm going to challenge you to do that. And lastly, I'll leave you with don't forget that your kids need social time. So as part of your routine, I really highly suggest that you add a social hour where they get to choose who they get to talk to online, whether it's a Snapchat or a video conference or FaceTime, and they get to talk to their friends for a good hour or whatever they want to do, where they're being social and interacting with people outside of the house. Super important for their mental health right now and for yours. So make sure that you take that social time also and call a family member, check on your parents, whatever that might be doing. What do you guys, before we finish, what's one idea that you heard tonight? I'm just curious that you think, yes, Christina, that was awesome. I'm going to take that with me and I'm going to implement it this week. I'd like to know, does anything stick out to you?
How often should you wash your sheets? I told my daughter, like, next year when she's at college, like, you will go into some rooms and they are funky, and it's because people do not know when they're supposed to wash their bedding, and it's just disgusting. So I'm definitely going to make the kids aware of how often that happens in the house.
That was mine too, because I literally, after one of my kids was throwing a fit about it, I had him Google dust mites and what happens if you don't, and when you see that stuff, like, for some reason, visuals, right? Pictures are worth 1,000 words. That was good because it was nothing I ever thought about. It's just brilliant that you're bringing all this stuff up beforehand. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say I really enjoyed the thing about talking about a routine. I feel like with some of the stuff that I do, even though you're talking about kids, when I'm coaching some of my clients, that routine, it's like reparenting and creating a routine and a structure. It seems to work really well for everyone, not just kids, but for me as well, and to embrace more and more of that. So I just relocated to Hawaii, by the way, as well. So it's a rough quarantine here. The wind behind me and the ocean. I'm not trying to make you all jealous, but it's amazing here. It's so beautiful.
Roxanne, hey, did you want to say something? You're on your mute.
I'll just say hi, and I love all the feedback. And no, I don't have my routine done for tomorrow, but I did kind of place it last week, so we will hope that all works out.
Yay. Yeah, and I like the routine versus the schedule. I mean, I think that just the word schedule, kids kind of tend to be like, I don't want to be on a schedule, but you create a routine and that's a little bit more accepted. It's all about language and psychological stuff too, but it helps. It's just like getting dressed in the morning. It all helps. So,
Christina, may I add one more thing? With
Yeah.
the schedule, since everyone's really big on that, and the routine, also remember that you can have flexibility within that. Like my Defiant one, if we have math and reading and typing or whatever, and he doesn't want to do math, but he wants to read, he can flip-flop and he feels like he has that sense of convenience. So just something to throw out there. It doesn't have to be set in stone. Again, it goes back to that flexibility and letting them have a little bit of say so. Has really
your
helped with the
routine
Defiant one.
could be a checklist insteid, which I think
Mhm.
is super powerful for a lot of kids. You see my little one.
I saw Maya.
But that's, I feel like some kids would rather have their routine be a checklist. If they just know, I think actually Catalina's oldest daughter is like this. As long as they know what they need to accomplish with the day, then they'll get it all done, but they want to do it in their own time. And you can still put on the checklist, hey, 30 minutes of exercise, we're going to read together at some point, because again, routine doesn't have to be all about school either. So you could just put all those things on the checklist, and eventually they just, and then they have control because they get to decide when they do each activity. So it does help for a lot of kids. Thank you for adding that, Cassie. And if you want to, again, hear Cassie and I talk on a special conversation about her book. She just wrote a book called The Suicidal Child that's coming out Wednesday at the Impactful Parent feed. So check that out, or you can go to the impactfulparent.com/YouTube, and it's on the YouTube channel right now. So thanks, everybody. And again, hopefully I'll see you all back on Thursday, same time, Thursday night.